This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yifan felt a burning sensation from the mark on his chest, he could not help but place the golden crystal on it. In an instant, the fist-sized golden light spread out from his chest. With the mark as the center, it radiated to every part of his body along his meridians. In the blink of an eye, his entire body turned golden, like a golden god of war. His body convulsed for a moment before he lost all feeling. His limbs were spread out in the air. This change immediately shocked everyone. Yifan's face was expressionless, even his eyes gradually became unfocused. He slightly opened his mouth and quietly floated there. Other than the golden light around his body, there was nothing else. It looked like it was dead but not dead. There was no sign of life, but it was full of spiritual energy. The crystal was embedded on his body, it was flawless, as if it had always been there. At this moment, it finally came back, Yifan's entire body was like a golden art piece, perfect and perfect. Young master. Fengzhu and the others were shocked and worried about Yifan's safety. The 6 of them rushed up together. Ants, it's too noisy. Fengyi stood a few hundred meters away from Yifan, quietly watching, not daring to move. Looking at the 6 people rushing up, he felt a burst of irritation for no reason. He raised his arm and waved it, a light shot out from the 5 elements beast collar ring, spreading out in the air in a half-moon shape, and slashed down. Not good. Quickly retreat. Emperor Qi. Fengzhu cried out in terror. That attack gave off a suppressing Emperor Qi, and even though it was not very powerful, it was enough to suppress all of their power. He wanted everyone to run away, but he found that he couldn't use any of his strength at this moment. He was completely stunned by the powerful moon-shaped slash. Although the power of Fengyi had not been fully restored, the martial sovereign of the 9th heaven was as tall as a mountain. He was not someone they could fight against. Elder Feng, what are you doing? Tao Can suddenly looked at Fengzhu in horror. The latter had used some kind of secret technique that caused his body to suddenly become several times larger. Not only was his gray robe torn apart, but it was also burning in the air. His entire person turned into a meteor and crashed toward the moon slash. Retreat quickly. You can't fight against this man. I'll leave the young master to you. These were Fengzhu's last words. Under the attack of the thief, he could only use a secret technique to detonate himself in order to fight for a chance of survival for his companion. After understanding the situation, he did not hesitate at all. Elder Feng. The people of the Temple of Holy Fire all cried out in grief as they watched Fengzhu collide with the moon slash. A powerful light burst out and was instantly destroyed like a star. After Fengzhu self-destructed, he still couldn't completely block the attack. There was still a strong force that penetrated the place where he died and flew down. Qi Guang let out a roar of grief and indignation. He madly slashed out dozens of times with the saber in his hand, forming a flash of saber light in front of everyone. However, it was still unable to block the power of the aftermath of the attack. After the saber light was extinguished, the 5 of them tried their best to block it, but they still spat out a large mouthful of blood and were sent flying. It was unknown whether they were still alive or dead. In the face of absolute power, they seemed too weak and could only become cannon fodder. After Fengyi attack, he seemed to have done something insignificant, as if he had gently wiped away a spider's web. His gaze swept across the battlefield, pointing at Yifan's body, he said, "Who can tell us what's going on with him?" The entire space was extremely quiet, and no one spoke. Not to mention that no one knew what was going on, even if they did, they wouldn't say anything. It seems that no one knows. Then I'll kill them one by one. I'll definitely meet someone who knows. Fengyi's eyes turned cold as he searched for his target. In his heart, he had already sentenced this man to death. Even Che Shuyao couldn't be kept alive. Otherwise, it would be too unsafe to get so many treasures. But before he got Noah's ship, he didn't dare to kill. Yunxiao's purple cauldron had also become his exclusive property. At this moment, Che Shuyao and Gu Duangyu were the most annoyed. They were as powerful as the ones from their fiefs, but they were both severely injured, so they were no match for him. The life and death of everyone in this space were in his hands. Not to mention Noah's ship, those 9th-tier profound armaments from the profound armament battle were already an astonishing amount of wealth. If you want to know what's going on, why don't you go up and try it yourself? Yunxiao said coldly as he stood in the glazed world. When Feng Yi was being used, he wanted to go over and save Feng Zhu. However, he tried his best to use the cauldron of mountain and river, but he realized that he couldn't move the power of the cauldron at all. He could only watch as Feng Zhu died. His heart was filled with anger. Although he did not get along well with Feng Zhu along the way, they had developed some friendship along the way. He regretted not killing this man first. Feng Yi stared at him with fire in his eyes. He was still frightened when he thought about how he had almost died in Yunxiao's hands, and he was also afraid of the glazed world emitted by the purple cauldron around him, so he did not dare to attack now. Yunxiao had also guessed the other party's concerns, but he could only feel bitter in his heart. Apart from the Ming King's seal, he did not know the second incantation to control the purple cauldron, so he could only intimidate others with his intimidating power. Once he walked out of the glazed world, he would probably be killed on the spot by Feng Yi. Yunxiao is right, Qing suddenly said. This man seems to be fusing with the crystal's power. I'm afraid it won't be long before Noah's ship is really taken by him. Feng Yi frowned and was a little hesitant. The key was that his strength had been suppressed earlier, and he had almost become a cripple. This made him extremely terrified, afraid that there would be some kind of change that would suppress him again. If that happened, he might really lose his life. You want to take Noah's ship with your cowardly and indecisive attitude? Qing laughed coldly, its face full of contempt. It was just short of giving him the middle finger. He had his own concerns, so he kept provoking them with words, hoping to find someone to lead the charge. Feng Yi's face flashed with anger and killing intent burst out. His aura pressed down on Qing Zhu and he coldly said, "When did I need you to tell me what to do?" Qing's body moved and turned into a bolt of lightning in the air. It revealed a huge shadow and sneered, "Feng Yi, others might be afraid of you, but do you think I'll be afraid of you?" He was certain that Feng Yi was injured and would not attack him at this time, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Sure enough, Feng Yi's eyes flashed. Before he really got Noah's ship, he had to store as much power as possible. Since you don't dare to try, I'm very interested in being the first. Qing said. He raised his hand, an arc of lightning flickered at his fingertips, forming a ball that shot out. That ball of lightning flickered in the air and landed on Yifan's body. Pai pa. The electric arc bomb hit his chest and immediately turned into electric currents that spread across his body. Then, it disappeared, as if there was no reaction. Could he be dead? Qing was stunned and found it hard to believe. After all, Yifan's body was full of spirituality, he did not look like he was dead at all. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as well, and a look of worry flashed in his eyes. Although the lightning ball little Qing had just used was extremely small, the energy contained in it was very powerful. If there was no reaction even after being hit by it, even if Yifan was not dead, he would at least be unconscious. He's really dead? Feng Yi was also stunned. When the lightning ball exploded on Yifan's body, he had gathered a breath of Yuan Qi to prepare for any unexpected situations. He did not expect to worry for nothing. Swish. Qing didn't believe it and pointed again. This time, the dark blue lightning turned into a laser and exploded on Yifan's throat, causing him to roll in the air. However, he was still golden and didn't suffer any damage. Yunxiao's pupils constricted as he looked at Yifan's body in horror. As if he had thought of something, he looked extremely shocked and cried out, "The imperishable golden body. This actually has an imperishable golden body." Everyone's expression changed as they looked at him in confusion. What do you know? Feng Yi's face turned ugly. What was the imperishable golden body? Could it be that he can't be killed? Yunxiao's eyes widened, and it took him a long time to recover from Yifan's body. With a reminiscing look on his face, as if he was recalling something, he gave Feng Yi a contemptuous look and snorted, "The imperishable golden body isn't indestructible. It's just that you can't break it with your strength." Do you know why Ao Chongkong was given the title of Overlord? The tyrant martial sovereign, Ao Chongkong? The inextinguishable golden body? Tang Jia suddenly exclaimed and looked at Yi Fan in shock. His eyes were filled with jealousy and hatred as he growled in a hoarse voice, "How is that possible? If he got the crystal, not only would he get Noah's ship, but he would also get the immortal golden body. Why did it turn out like this? Those things were clearly mine." The fire of jealousy was almost burning on his face, and smoke was coming out of the top of his head. Lord Ao Chongkong's indestructible golden body? Feng Yi's expression changed. Although many martial artists knew that Ao Chongkong was powerful, they did not know how he was powerful. As a martial emperor powerhouse from one of the 7 superpowers, he naturally knew about Ao Chongkong's indestructible golden body. "Are you sure this is the imperishable golden body?" he cried out in horror. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead, and he felt a chill all over his body. If Yi Fan really had the inextinguishable golden body, how could he survive when he awakens? Yunxiao's eyes were also filled with doubt. He stared at it for a long time before he nodded and said, "It's indeed the imperishable golden body." However, Yi Fan seems to be many levels lower than Ao Chongkong. Could it be that the imperishable golden body is also divided into levels? His brows furrowed as he fell into deep thought. During the Battle of the Sanctuary, he had been suppressed by the imperishable golden body. Now that he had also cultivated the tyrant body tempering technique, he naturally knew all of this like the back of his hand. Feng Yi's heart twitched, and his whole body shivered. For some reason, Yunxiao's words seems to be many levels lower than Ao Chongkong sent a chill down his spine. He turned to look at Yunxiao, feeling as if a stone had been placed on his heart. Little Qing's brows were also tightly furrowed, but he was much more free and easy. He snorted coldly and said, "What imperishable golden body? There's no such thing in this world as eternal indestructibility." Yunxiao did not say much. The reason it was not destroyed was because of the lack of power. "I don't believe that this mere mortal body can't be broken." He turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed up, stopping in front of Yi Fan. He spread out his body like a screen, lighting up the surroundings with a deep blue light. He shouted, "Shaoinimu profound azure lightning." Qing raised its fists high above its head, gathered the lightning into a big club, and smashed it down. Boom. The huge lightning struck Yi Fan's body, the lightning moved around every inch of his skin, the powerful lightning flickered in the air, shining on little Qing's shocked face. Little Qing took in a deep breath of cold air, it kept the lightning and stopped in front of Yi Fan, saying in shock, "Is this not enough? Could it be that this indestructible golden body can only be broken by the world-destroying sacred thunder? I'll try." Feng Yi flew over with a gloomy face. Seeing that little Qing had attacked so many times and nothing had happened to it, the worries in his heart lessened. He put the 5 elements beast taming ring in his palm, and the power of the 5 elements gathered on his fingertips, dense and powerful. "Try my 5 elements Saint Claw." With a pangy sound, the 5 fingers directly stabbed into Yi Fan's head, the 5 different powers were blocked by the golden light, traces of spiritual pressure appeared on his head and spread out in all directions, showing a 5-colored light. Everyone was shocked. If there was no reaction to Little Green's attack, it meant that it was completely ineffective. Now that Feng Yi was used, the golden light resisted it, it proved that this move was already threatening Yi Fan's body. Feng Yi also understood this point and was overjoyed. He poured more power into the 5 elements beast taming ring in his palm. For a moment, the power of the 5 elements increased and evolved on Yi Fan's head. It continued to eat away at the golden light. Yi Fan's face began to show an expression of pain. Yunxiao was shocked. If Feng Yi was broken through the golden body, Yi Fan would be completely finished. He suddenly pushed the cauldron of mountain and river, and it rumbled in the air. He continuously used his hands to hit the body of the cauldron, wanting to suppress Feng Yi. He had used up all his spiritual energy and could not use the Ming King seal at all. He could only try his best. Qing instantly turned into a ray of light and blocked his way. He said expressionlessly, "You can't go there." "Don't forget that you still owe me a favor," Yuanshao said, his eyes cold. Qing frowned and said, "Even if I let you go, there will be others who will stop you. Noah's ship wasn't something your friend could get." Everyone present was eyeing him covetously. Taking Noah's ship out of his body had actually saved him. "I owe you a favor, so I can try my best to keep him alive. Consider it as me returning the favor, how about it?" Yuanshao snorted disdainfully and said with a sneer, "Look at him. If his inextinguishable golden body is broken, do you think he can still live?" Little Qing looked back at Yifan. The pain on Yifan's face became even more intense. Feng Yi's fingers were already in the golden light and could pierce into his head at any time. At that time, he would definitely die and not be able to escape. "I'll return the favor I owe you in the future," Qing said guiltily. "I'll pay you back, your sister." Yuanshao cried out in anger. He slapped the dynasty bell with one hand, and it let out an endless buzzing sound. It kept growing bigger and covered little Qing's body, trying to trap it inside. Qing let out a sigh and lightly punched out. A bolt of lightning struck the bell and sent it flying back. "It's no use. Although your Xian artifact is heaven-defying, your cultivation is too low. You have no chance of winning against me." Little Qing was telling the truth. At this time, not to mention controlling the dynasty bell, even the cauldron of mountain and river began to gradually return to its miniature form and flew back to Yunshao's forehead. He had almost used up all of his strength, and his expression was extremely ugly. He took out a large number of pills from his ring and poured them into his mouth like beans. They were all the pills he had picked up from little Qing earlier. Qing ignored him. As long as Yuanshao did not cause trouble, it would not care. Now, everyone's attention was focused on Yifan and Feng Yi. They were waiting for Noah's ship to appear and snatch it. However, Shang and the other demons were unusually calm. They all looked on coldly, as if they had no intention of getting involved. Tang Jia flew to Shang's side and whispered, "Brother He, help me." His eyes were full of determination, as if he would only be satisfied if he got Noah's ship. "All saint artifacts contain heavenly fate," Shang said. "It's not something a human can do. What's yours is yours, what's not yours can't be forced, but if you force it, you'll be killed." Tang Jia's face changed and he was unwilling to give up. He held the vermilion bird saber tightly and watched from the side. If he had the chance, he would not just stand by and watch. Suddenly, the entire space trembled, interrupting everyone's concentration. They looked around in surprise, but they didn't find anything unusual. Boom, boom, boom. Another wave of vibration came, and it began to rumble one after another. The entire space became extremely unstable, as if it was going to collapse at any time. Not far away, spatial cracks began to appear, spreading out bit by bit. Is the space about to shatter? Qing was shocked and looked at the cracks, muttering to itself, "Is there a problem with Noah's ship?" he asked. He looked at Yifan's body in shock. He was still covered in golden light, his face showed pain, but there was nothing else. Boom, boom, boom. The quaking continued, and there was a huge problem with the space. Other than cracks, all kinds of abnormal energy began to appear and radiate aimlessly in all directions. An extremely cold wind blew in from somewhere, and the temperature in the entire space plummeted, as if winter had arrived in the 12th lunar month. "Senior brother, this seems to have a strange swan and eye." The Soul Devourer clan disciple looked at the cold air that was blowing in his face. He frowned and reached out to touch it. A warm light protected his palm, but as soon as it came into contact with the cold air, it froze without any warning. Before he could react, the cold wind blew into his body and his body instantly turned into ice crystals. He had no power to resist at all. The expression on his face was still frowning and he looked very careful. He was like a very vivid piece of art, floating in the air. This Ing Luo. Everyone was shocked as they looked at the ice statue in horror. That was a martial supreme level expert, and he had died in an instant? This kind of visual conflict was too hard to accept. Zhang Xiaotian's mouth was wide open in shock. He clearly felt that not only was this disciple's body frozen, but even his soul power had disappeared. In other words, even his soul had been frozen. Suddenly, a strange energy burst out in the air and shot toward the disciple's body. With a crispy crack sound, the disciple's body directly cracked and shattered into countless ice shards, scattering in all directions. A perfectly fine person had just turned into countless ice shards and dust, leaving nothing behind. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. They felt a chill down their spine and their hands and feet were cold. The spatial crack was getting bigger and bigger, and the terrifying cold wind kept blowing in. More and more of it came in, and the swish-swish sound was like a death talisman to everyone's ears, making them shiver. Arg! A shrill scream suddenly stopped. A martial royal realm expert of the Palace of Holy Fire was blown by the cold wind and instantly turned into ice crystals. Then, it shattered with a crack, and the Soul Devourer clan's disciple's fate was no more. The entire space was like a house with holes on all sides, and cold wind kept blowing in. It was like the arrival of winter, and everything was cold.
Oh no.
Yunxiao cried out in shock. This is the rule of winter. Nirvana. Everyone was shocked and immediately understood. It turned out that the rotation of the 4 seasons in the outside world had already crossed the winter solstice, and this space was beginning to shatter under the power of Nirvana. Qing's face turned pale, and it said unwillingly, could it be that even the sealed space can't block the law of winter of the unaging mountain, and we're destined to die? Noah's ship's power seems to have been sealed, Li said with a serious expression. That's why the space is unstable. If we can open a territory with a sacred artifact, we should be able to avoid this disaster. She turned her eyes to Yunxiao, the meaning in her eyes self-evident. Shwa shwa shwa. Everyone's eyes turned to the purple cauldron beside him. Yunxiao's face flickered slightly. He patted the cauldron of mountain and river and put it away, then said lazily, although this profound level weapon of mine is somewhat profound, it's definitely not some saint weapon you guys are talking about, let alone be able to contend against the throne, the unaging mountain. Li Yunxiao, Qing said with a gloomy face, we're all going to die if we don't work together at this time. Yunxiao's eyes shone with a cold light as he looked at Qing Zhu and said with a sneer, united? My friend is about to be played to death by you, and you still want to talk about working together with me? If I had the strength now, the first thing I would do would be to slap you to death. Little Qing's face turned white, it turned around and looked at Feng Yi and Yi Fan. The power of the 5 elements had already penetrated deep into the golden light and was about to pierce into the top of his head. With a crazed look on his face, he turned to look at little Qing and Yunxiao and said in a cold voice. At this time, Noah's ship will soon be mine. No one can save him. Feng Yi's face was ferocious, and the Emperor Qi of the 9 heavens around him was getting stronger and stronger. He had completely recovered his peak power, and now everyone's life was in his hands. No one could resist him. He turned around and suddenly trembled. The power of the 5 elements St. Claude scattered due to the violent tremble, as if it was being shaken out by the golden light. Feng Yi's eyes widened in shock as he stared at Yi Fan. He felt his body turn cold, as if he was even colder than the winter destructive force.